I'm going to give it a signal.
Good morning, everybody. We are now in Dubai at the COP Climate Conference, and my name is Jeroom Remmers, Director of the True Animal Protein Price Coalition. We are a global coalition of organizations involved in the area of agriculture, food and climate, and asking for true prices for products including climate and environmental costs. Today I'm going to talk about how to realize climate goals with fiscal incentives in the agriculture and food sector, with public support and without harming low-income groups. So a lot of research is done about this topic because it's an important topic. So for instance, a few months ago in the Nature Food magazine, this article was published about meat taxes in Europe. They can be designed to avoid overburdening low-income consumers. As you know, food prices rise in the past years, so it's very important to know that if a government would introduce a tax on meat, that it doesn't harm low-income groups. And of course, additional measures has to be taken to avoid that low-income groups are harmed more compared to rich persons. And you can use tax revenues to recycle this and send it to low-income groups and reduce prices for other kinds of foods which are more healthy and with less climate impact. Again, about my own organization, we have 60 partners in different parts of the world, mostly in Europe. We represent a lot of people because of our partner network. And 2 years ago, a letter was signed by over 5,000 companies and NGOs in over 100 countries who supported this idea of carbon pricing food in countries with high meat consumption levels, mostly high-income countries, but also China and, for instance, Brazil, and etc. So what do? We commission reports on this topic. We do policy advocacy in EU and, of course, here globally. We have some consumer campaigns to start awareness, and we do projects where we really implement the true price, the higher price on meat, and reduce prices for other food products. So in the Netherlands, we had a lot of success with policy advocacy. Many political parties now support our plan because of our plan that also the tax revenues are used also for low-income groups and to reduce prices of vegetables, fruits, and meat alternatives, and even pay farmers more income to do the right things and to reduce emissions. We did several consumer surveys showing that there's support among Western European citizens for this proposal. And we did also some research by C. Delft consultancy company on how exactly the tax design could be developed. So our inquiry showed that 60% of Western European people agree with true pricing of food. So this means food can become, on average, maybe a little bit more expensive, but they still accept because of the climate reasons and health reasons. So reports showed it's feasible, you can do it, and the European Parliament also supported a VAT reform on VAT tariffs on food products with the highest climate impact foods like meat going to the highest VAT rate, and vegetables and fruits go to the zero VAT rate. And important EU member states like Germany, Netherlands and Denmark really considered this kind of options, and they are doing studies how to do it and get more political support. So one of our reports we presented in the EU Parliament 4 years ago was Sustainability Charge on Meat. This report became really well known. It was covered in global media, and Because the reason behind is that our food does not include all costs. You may have heard about externalities, external environmental effects, which are brought to other persons who have to pay the damage of climate change and biodiversity loss and other pollutants. But when you calculate the cost of this damage, you can calculate how much the real price of a product should be when you internalize those external costs. So it's bad for the environment, for the climate, for health, and we also pay a lot of healthcare costs because we eat in most countries too much meat compared to health dietary guidelines. So true pricing can be done, for instance, by increasing VAT rates or having excise duties. Or having ETS systems, emission trading schemes for greenhouse gas emissions in the food sector. Here you can see what the method of true pricing actually is. So you see the market price below, and you see on top of it external costs and social costs like healthcare costs, which are not paid in the supermarket when you buy food. But the goal is that this true price gap is reduced, and you can do this by taxation issues. We do it with CO2 taxes in the energy sector. We do it with sugar taxes in the health sector, so we can also do it with meat and other products in the food sector. But at global level, food products, including all those true price gaps, are 3 times higher because of all this damage, and the societies have to pay the damage, but it's not when you pay it in the shop, but it's later in forms of taxes and cleaning up things and healthcare bills. So it's better to have it included in the price, and for the economy this gives a better signal. The EU Farm to Fork strategy, the EU Green Deal, in 2021 recognized this issue, and they had formulated goals that meat consumption should go down for both health and climate reasons. But the problem is in the implementation. But we hope after EU elections this will become a hot topic. So there was a majority, actually, as I told, in the parliament on this VAT reform. Organizations like Greenpeace Europe, they made some calculations that it's really important to have such kind of taxes, especially on meat, because according to them, EU meat consumption should have to be reduced by 2030 with 70% to be in line with the Paris climate goals. And European meat consumption is not really declining, but it's more or less the same, and even growing in some countries. This is the Ipsos consumer survey we did in the Netherlands, in France and Germany. And it showed that in average 60% of this kind of consumers agree with this kind of VAT reform that was also supported by the majority of the European Parliament. This means that we asked them if they would agree with a VAT increase on meat and sugary drinks and a zero VAT rate on healthy and sustainable food. And so people like this idea. And there's also support for our own proposal, which is more extreme, you could say, because then VAT increase is not like 10% increase, but then it's it's on average 40% increase, which also will reduce meat consumption more. But even this proposal gets a majority support if the VAT revenues are, the tax revenues are recycled to consumers and farmers. We also asked where can you pay the tax on greenhouse gas emissions in the food chain? Is it the farmer, the food company, or the supermarket? And people say, no, it's not the farmers, but let supermarkets and consumers pay. That's more fair, because farmers have very low incomes already, mostly. Of those kind of products. It's similar to meat, but not as high. So they determined the price increase needed for the environmental cost. So you also know the reduction in consumption, and then you know the climate benefit in terms of reduced greenhouse gas emissions. So they calculated 3 options: the excise levy, like TAPP Coalition proposes, a VAT increase, another option with less impact, but it's still a good one, and the ETS livestock, so emission trading schemes for meat and dairy. And actually, this option is now taken very seriously by the EU Commission. Directorate Jet €1.44. That should be added on top of the bill. And for milk, it's 34 euro cents. And for cheese, it's €2.50, more or less. So this is considerable, we know, but this kind of taxes should be implemented similar like CO2 taxes in the energy sector and the transport sector and other sectors. Yeah, I go through it quickly. This is a picture of the countries like Bulgaria, Denmark, and 3 Baltic states already apply the highest, the normal VAT rates for meat and dairy. So for instance, in Denmark, you pay 25% on your supermarket price for meat already. And we hope that other countries can do the same, so not apply the lowest VAT rate on meat and dairy, but apply the highest VAT rate. This will help and reduce meat consumption by 5 or 10%. Here you can see the overview of the different VAT rates. And stakeholders who read this report in an inquiry preferred the option that not the farmers should be part of this ETS system, like was proposed in New Zealand and Denmark, but the dairy factories and the slaughterhouses are part of the ETS. So they have to reduce the emissions from the food they sell, and every year the allowed emissions from their companies have to be reduced every year till 2040 and 2050. There's no emissions left, and they have to make sure that their food products are climate neutral. Yeah, maybe food prices increase, but you can take measures to use the revenues of compensating it to low-income groups. There's another report about this topic, and it showed that when you increase a VAT rate on meat and dairy on the one hand, and on the other hand you have a 0 VAT rate on vegetables, fruits, cereals and bread, overall consumers will pay less in the supermarket for their foods. So food can become 10% cheaper overall. And this can be done also by giving food vouchers. You can have a 0 VAT rate, but a lot of countries now already apply a system to pay low-income groups food vouchers so they can buy healthy food in the shops because they cannot afford to buy it. And this can be also done with tax revenues from a meat tax, that you pay credits or just payments every month to low-income groups. And this was also calculated in another study, that if you give a lump sum, a payment to the lowest income groups, that's the blue color, that you can see that the inequality in incomes of different kinds of people will reduce, meaning that low-income groups have better financial opportunities. So their position increases when you apply a meat tax and use the revenue to focus on those kind of groups and increase their income. So actually this is really benefiting also the low-income groups, and we hope that political parties who represent low-income groups support this proposal. Yes, the UN Secretary General said we are on a highway to hell, climate hell, and this is also very much true for meat. Meat consumption and production increased in the last 20 years with a factor 1. So it's doubled just in 20 years' time. And it's projected to increase by 50% in 2050. And you know that meat and also dairy have a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. So this is a real problem, and it's undermining all the Paris goals. So everything we do in the energy sector, the housing and industry sector, it's undermined by the increased consumption of meat. And if countries don't want to tax meat, then it's all lost. We cannot realize the Paris climate goals. So I'm really very happy that last week more than 130 countries signed a declaration on food, agriculture and climate. They also signed a declaration on health and climate, and in both declarations they committed to reduce food products with a high climate or health footprint, which means reducing meat. So, and they also promised to report on this every year. So I hope this this message will be heard clear and loud. And as you know, a lot of consumers are waiting for politicians to have the courage to implement this kind of proposals. So we have also developed 5 priorities for 2030. So you can have fiscal incentives, but you can also have regulations and other things you can do to reduce meat consumption. So, but first of all, and this is recognized by a lot of scientists in Europe, that first of all you have to make sure prices are right, because consumers and producers listen to prices. When something is more high in price, then you buy less. So this is really important. So this is the polluter pays principle. It's adopted 50 years ago by OECD countries that this should be the core of environmental policies, but it's implemented in the energy sector, but not in the agriculture and food sector. So this is wrong. So it's now, after 50 years, finally we have to start with doing it. And farmers, food companies or supermarkets should pay for their greenhouse gas emissions, at least €90 per ton, but more is better for positive impact. We also can have import taxes on meat, dairy and soy in Europe, but any other country can also do it to make sure that you don't import too much from those kinds of products. This will also increase prices in supermarkets. Another priority, that if you do this, it should be fair, like in the energy sector. So low-income groups should not be harmed by it. Otherwise, it will not be implemented and there will be a political problem. So you need also a social food and climate fund. So when a government or a EU, for instance, gets revenues from this kind of taxes, a fund should be created to support the lowest income groups and companies who are affected by it. So healthy food credit cards could be given to people to buy the right things, which is healthy and climate friendly. And you can also give subsidies to retail companies and catering companies to make vegetables, fruit, plant-based meat and organic food cheaper. And organic food, especially for beef and dairy products, have a positive climate footprint. So switching to organic dairy production is also very good for our climate. So another priority would be legislation and public procurement. For instance, in the catering sectors where governments have restaurants, they can ask the catering companies to actually implement this through prices. And it's already done in the Netherlands in many catering locations. I had another press conference last week about it. So it can be done, and it has effect that meat consumption in this kind of restaurants is reduced because of this true price on meat, and on the other hand, the lower prices for vegetables and fruits and vegan meals. So then this is this kind of food diet change can be challenged by the right fiscal incentives and price incentives. But legislation is also very important. You can have a directive that it's obligated for meat processors that when they have processed meat, like hamburgers, they have to mix 30% of plant-based proteins in it. It's already done, but if you do it, and it's obligated everywhere, maybe everywhere in the world, then 10% of all greenhouse gas emissions from meat can be reduced just by adding legumes or beans, etc., even rice, in the mixed meat products like hamburgers. Last priority is promotion and marketing. Of course, people have to know why this is important, why we should have a different diet with less meat. We don't say don't eat meat anymore, it can help, but reducing meat consumption with 50% already helps so much. So we need to stop meat price marketing. So there can be legislation to that, to forbid it. Some municipalities in the Netherlands already do it. It's taken off the streets. You cannot make marketing for meat products and also for airline tickets. EU restrictions on advertising and promotion subsidies. The EU is even now still giving a lot of subsidies to promote meat consumption. So this has to be changed as well. And environmental labeling can be implemented obligatory, that supermarkets show on the products they sell if the food has a high or a low planet score, eco score. So that people know, okay, this product is good for the planet or the environment and the other one is not. So you are better informed, and then consumers will also accept that maybe the bad products, so to say, with a negative impact on the planet will be taxed in the future. So a lot of goals can be defined, how to make food systems in line with the Paris climate goals. We have to increase the plant-based protein consumption compared to the animal proteins. This is really important, that this is also part of national determined contributions of countries. So in summary, 60% of Western Europeans agree pricing of meat and dairy products with zero fat rates on healthy food products and plant-based food products. A report showed that it's feasible, all problems can be solved. What are we waiting for? The EU Parliament supports this idea. A lot of member states more and more support it. So now you know why this is important. So thank you very much for your attention, and maybe there's somebody with a question about this topic. And you can see all the information on our website, tappcoalition.eu. We have a lot of news items of the COP28, also about this presentation you can see there. And it's exciting times. I'm sure, I know that UN organizations now are really admitting greenhouse gas emissions on food need to be implemented. Soon you will hear about it, I expect it. But it's also in the last IPCC report, this is really what is needed to realize the climate goals in the food sector. Thank you very much. Is there any question? Yes?
Thank you, gentlemen. Satoru Mizuguchi, writing for agriculture newspapers. Two questions. First, your action tried to impact not only climate and agriculture policy, but also fiscal policy and healthcare policies. If so, what is the reaction of the policymaker of Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Welfare to your actions and proposals? And the second question is there any additional presentation by you or your coalition members for the coming week during COP28?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Our last finance minister was Wopke Hoekstra. He is now the Commissioner of Climate of the European Commission. And a few years ago, his Ministry of Finance presented a report about the true price of meat and in the Netherlands, how this could be implemented. This was a study done to make political parties aware, because of their election programs, that this option is really possible. It will reduce greenhouse gas emissions by a lot of amount, and it was also calculated in this report that there were a lot of health benefits. So it was calculated that 8,000 people will not die because of eating too much meat when this meat tax is introduced. And healthcare costs will be reduced with millions of euros per year because of introducing a tax on meat. So there is support from the Ministry of Finance, but they make some new calculations, and there are some more and more political parties, including our Minister of Economic Affairs and Climate. His party supports it, but we also have other political parties who don't. So this is still a problem also in Germany, by the way. And the other question, yes, we do have one last event. It will be Saturday, I think 3:15. Here, I will be there online, but it's with exciting persons like Gunhild Stordalen from Eat Lancet, from FAIR, the investor organization of climate, and be there, and you can see it on our website also. Thank you very much for your attention.